Okay, so so my name is Lee Ford. Today I'm going to talk about bringing MCP servers into declarative agents, specifically the Agent 365 ones. The I think they're now called Work IQ, but let's not worry about that. We're going to call them Agent 365 today, as far as the session goes. So, quick bit about myself. You can follow me on GitHub, on Blue Sky. I'm also on LinkedIn. Yeah, so firstly, before we get into sort of the declarative agent side of things, we're just going to quickly cover some fundamentals when it comes to MCP. We're probably all familiar with this anyway at this point. It's been around a little while now, but it's not Microsoft Copilot. It's Model Context Protocol. And it's a way of creating additional context for your model using an open source and well-defined protocol rather than every model or every AI provider having their own way of interfacing with external systems. There's a way of sort of harmonizing that and bringing it into one method of doing it. So one way of thinking about it is it's an API for AI to use, so it's sort of familiar with how MCP works. So just if we cover kind of the key sort of components or fundamentals when we're talking about MCP, we have the MCP host, and that's the application that runs it. So it could be in VS Code, it could be Copilot, Claude, whatever. And inside of the host application, we have a client application, and that's effectively just the client side of the server to client connection. So, you might have in here, you've got VS Code, it's got two MCP clients. One's connecting to the Azure MCP server, one's connecting to GitHub. So you can have multiple clients connected to multiple servers, all within the same host application. So you could be having a chatting VS Code, and it could be pulling in from 3 different MCP servers all at the same time in the same conversation. So this got announced, I think, last year at Ignite, Agent 365, and I've kind of highlighted the Start Building Anywhere bit. We've got on the right-hand side here some MCP servers. Like I say, now they're called Work IQ MCP servers, so it's like Work IQ Mail, I think, rather than Outlook Mail. And one thing to note is it's not just for Foundry agents, it's not just for Copilot Studio or custom engine agents. You can actually use declarative agents. And when we talk about declarative agents, we're talking about the ones with inside M365 Agents Toolkit. So if we just look at sort of the schema here on the right, I'll go into it in a bit more detail later on, but on the right-hand side here, we have an MCP server configured. One thing to note is currently you have to define, so when you have an MCP server, you have tools, which are effectively like API endpoints almost, or actions. So for example, here we've got create list item. We have to actually document the parameters and what type they are, what's expected and what's required. I think in a future version, hopefully that is no longer the case, and the whole point of MCP is that that's learned, so we don't have to define it, but that's how it is at the moment. Now it does support authentication methods such as OAuth, so we don't have to create our own authentication mechanism or have some middleware, and it just makes things a lot more straightforward. And the idea with MCP as well is you can use it multiple times. So if you configure this for one declarative agent, you could use the same configuration for another. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about today, or an example that I've got, which is something called Food Bank Friend. So something that my wife does a lot of is collecting food from supermarkets and other places, but also bringing our own food and consumables to give to food banks for people that need it. And part of that is working out if you've got an excess of something, or supermarket has an excess of something, like where do you take it? What do local food banks need? So there is in the UK, there's an API that allows you to do this called Give Food. And using that API to query local food banks, we can then use the MCP servers to connect to a SharePoint list to document what we're giving to who, but also put it in our calendar as reminders to say, oh, we should deliver this to this food bank on this date. So we've got a combination here of an MCP and an API plugin within the same declarative agent. So we've actually got two MCP servers because the Outlook one and the SharePoint one are two different connections. So if I now come out here, I've prayed to the demo gods. So hopefully it being AI and everything, it doesn't decide it doesn't want to work whilst I'm demoing. But so if I say, 5 food banks near me, and I'm going to say I'm in Birmingham, so I'm going to say I'm just going to make up a random postcode. I'm going to say B45. So it's going to look for food banks in the local area of Birmingham 45 in the UK, and see. And let's just see what it comes back with. So it's going to connect to the Give Food API, and it's found some ones that are nearby. So so here we've got one that needs 33 different things, including custard and coffee, UHT juice. So if I now say to that, I am near number 4, and I bring some custard and coffee and toothpaste on I'm just gonna say Sunday at 10 a.m. Okay, I'm shortcutting this because I know exactly the question it's going to ask, just for brevity. Just put it all in there, one prompt. So now hopefully it should go away and go, yeah, that's cool. We'll put it in your calendar, and we'll also log it in the SharePoint list. So first thing is I need to review the payload. So it's saying it wants to connect to my Outlook calendar. It's going to create a calendar appointment. This is what it's going to put in there. That's fine. If I click see more, I can see the sort of the full body of the request. Now, if I confirm that, I then get the prompt for the SharePoint list side of things. Similar, really, it's going to put a payload in with all the information in, and then I'm going to confirm that. Okay. Now, hopefully, it does what it's meant to do. It's asking me to sign in. One thing to note is that the Agent 365 MCP servers are currently in preview. So I've had it where it was working, and then I went to demo it, 2 weeks later, and the parameters have changed, what was required, and what format it needed to be in. But thankfully, it's working now. So that's brilliant. It's all worked. Now, if I look at the debug, we can actually see what's being used. So obviously on the previous request, it used this one, but for here, it's now decided it needs to use the create list item tool, and it also needs to use the create event tool. And then if I look down here, the failed is because I wasn't signed in. And then if I look at the OK ones, we can see effectively this similar to the prompt that we got with what's going to be sent to the what payload is going to be sent to the MCP server. So we can see the URL that we're going to be using, and the payload, and then we can look at the response to see what we get back, and obviously everything's fine. And same with the list item, we can see the request and the response. So it's just a great way of seeing what tools are being called when, and what's going backwards and forwards with the agent. So that's great. Now, if I just look at the calendar, I can see now I've got this in my calendar invite in my for that donation. And if I look at the list, hopefully that's now come through as well. If I just refresh the page, yeah, here we go. We've got one here as well. I think I've got my list is set to US time, I think, so the date's slightly off there, but it's ultimately logged what I'm giving to who and when. And that's it from a demo point of view. If I now just show you the code quickly, we have, as I said, it's a declarative agent, so it's using M365 Agents Toolkit. And the first thing is we have the agent instructions, where we go through, explaining what its purpose is, the workflow that we need to work through. We need to know, when they'd like to volunteer, what they're going to bring, and then we kind of give examples of the payload that we're expecting to the MCP server expects it in, and We've got things like SharePoint site ID and SharePoint list ID, where we're trying to hard code the list and the site. Otherwise, it kind of asks you for it, and obviously an end user is not going to know what their site and list ID is. And what we can do is, if we you can effectively put these as environmental variables. So when the agent gets built and packaged, it includes this in the hard-coded one. So you don't have to keep it in source control. You can use the sort of the Declarative Agents toolkit to sort of populate these as it gets run. From a declarative agent point of view, we're using the latest 1.6 schema. We are referencing those instructions here rather than putting them in the JSON itself. I've got some example prompts, and then I've got these actions, and these are the three different tools that we're using. So we've got the API, which is an API plugin. We've got the MCP server, and then we've got for SharePoint, and then we've got the MCP server for Outlook. So if I just look at the Outlook one, like I say, we have to actually at the moment, in MCP, they're called tools. In this schema, they're called functions, but effectively we have to map the MCP tool to the Declarative Agents function or the plugins function. Otherwise, they don't line up. And so if you just thought, okay, well, I'll expect these to be learned because that's how MCP works, it won't work. You have to actually declare them, which is what I've done. And then for the runtime, we've selected that it's an MCP server. We've using the Teams developer portal for storing the credentials to connect to the MCP server. So we're not storing those things like client secrets anywhere in the code or in the declarative agent. We get that at runtime from the Teams developer portal. SharePoint is very similar. In this case, we've got a create list item and a list item action, and then again we have the same OAuth reference ID, and the plugin vault is used again, and then again we're just specifying the functions that are tied to this MCP server. And then finally, we have the food bank API. So we've only got one function here. We've got a name and a description. And then to get sort of all the endpoints that the API might have, we have the API specifications file. So if I open that up, I've just specified the ones that we actually use rather than every single API endpoint for that API. So we've got one called location search, and I just got the Swagger file and got it to generate. I used AI to generate the sort of the YAML format that this needs to be in for it to work. And yeah, that works pretty well. And I think that is everything. Let me just go back to my slide deck. Yeah, that's it. I've written a blog post about using Agent 365 MCP servers with declarative agents. So if you want to have a look at a bit more detail how they work and how you can get yourself up and running with things like creating the Teams dev portal for OAuth authentication and whatnot, definitely take a look. I have submitted the sample to the PMP ProDev samples repo. So I think once that gets approved, you should see what I've demoed here for your own use. And thank you very much.